Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Tom Godfrey. Tom, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Lewis. It's a pleasure to be here.
Amazing. Well, I always start this podcast with arguably the hardest question on the planet. Tom, in your own words, what makes you a man?
That's a great question. Man, I've never been asked that question. I think I'm an example to my two sons. That's what makes me a man.
Great. Short and sweet. I love it. It's my favorite question. And if you've not been asked it, you should ask it yourself more times and as often as possible. And especially maybe ask your sons as well, right? I think it'd be nice for them.
Great question.
Yeah. So, Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and what you're up to?
Sure. So I'm a mindset coach. That's what I'm calling myself right now. I'm a father and a husband primarily. I was a corporate employee for a long time, 25 years, until a couple of years ago. And I think I kind of had the next 25 years kind of mapped out. And I started to kind of reflect and ask questions, which has led me, I guess, to where I am now and to chatting to you. And the sort of questions I found myself asking were, I started to look ahead. I started to think, when I get to the end of my life, am I going to look back with regret? It's what I started to think about and started to feel into. And I couldn't really answer it. I started to think, well, not about the things I've done, but about maybe the things I had never had the courage to perhaps find out if I could have done. Kind of this idea of potential. I'd always been fascinated with this idea of human potential. I'd been studying, I guess, what I consider the great teachers: Neville Goddard, Bob Proctor, Abraham Hicks, this whole idea of the power of awareness and the power of mind. So I'd kind of been fascinated with this awareness thing, this human potential thing, for a long time. So I qualified as a coach. I started working with clients, and eventually, a couple of years ago, I left my career to coach full time. And that is now what I do. Is I work with both men and women. And really, it's speaking to this success without fulfillment thing, where it feels like materially everything is kind of going well, but there's something lacking. There's something, there's this seeking thing. And I kind of feel like that's where I was a few years ago. This is a really long answer, but I guess I'm framing where I'm at the moment. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think my follow-on question to that is, what triggered that questioning? Where did that come?
Yeah, I guess it was a culmination of a lot of things. I guess I'd always asked questions. I'd always been interested to understand how things work and why things are done a certain way. And I think I'd always questioned kind of the status quo, perhaps. And I guess over time, it kind of adds up, and there's this sense, this feeling, this I kind of refer to it as the seeking feeling, and we can pay attention. We can kind of ignore it, or we can eventually pay attention to it. And I guess I was ignoring it for a long time, until eventually it gets too loud to ignore. And really, is there another way? Is there another way? Is this what it's all about? Is life really all about this? So that whole kind of reflective thing, it was a culmination.
Okay, so I again, I'm in a similar sort of position to yourself. Like, I started to have these questions with myself. I had a role, I had a business, and I was doing these things, and they were sort of taken away from me slowly, and then I was sort of left in this position of like, what is next was actually the first question, rather than what does it all mean and what it's all about. And I've started to have those sort of deeper conversations. How do you think someone can start in that space? How do you think someone can start to become more mindful?
I think it's about being honest with ourselves. So I think it's about getting back in touch with ourselves. It's about not being afraid of what we're going to find. I think a lot of the way we're taught, a lot of the way kind of society is geared up is around this whole external seeking paradigm. Go out and make an impact, go out and achieve attainment, acceptance. It's all about external validation. So we're kind of taught this paradigm that if we find enough things out there, we're going to feel a sense of fulfillment or achievement or something in here. So to answer the question, I think it's about recognizing that actually that which we are truly seeking, it's never about the thing. It's about how we think the thing is going to make us feel. So it's about bringing it back, getting in touch with how we actually feel, and not being afraid. So one thing that, so I guess when I'm speaking now, I'm speaking about, I guess, my own personal experience and also what I've learned through the coaching space from my clients.
Yeah.
Because I used to think this was just me. This is the other thing. I used to think like, is there something wrong with me that I don't feel kind of fulfilled or ungrateful or something like this? But what I've learned is, almost without exception, we're all having very similar inner dialogues, and it comes back to, for me, it comes back to this idea that we're seeking something out there, and it's completely backwards, because what we're actually seeking is the feeling that we believe this thing is going to bring us, right? This will make me happy. So it's not about the thing, it's about the happiness thing. So it's actually really simple. It's about bringing everything back to sitting with ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. That's a tough place to get to, though, right? It's like there's a challenge.
It's terrifying.
No worries to anyone listening. It's terrifying, apparently, according to Tom, to get there. When we're talking about these things, though, and what I sort of want to really get across is, it's usually career, right? People try to sort of have this abrupt change in career, or this abrupt change in things like that. Have you managed to find things outside of that? And are there other things that people can focus on as well? Because what we don't want is everyone to just panic and quit their job.
Yeah, spot on. And it's not actually about the job. This is the thing. Yeah, the job is just just to come back to the terrifying thing. I want to qualify that.
Yeah.
And the reason it feels terrifying is because what we're actually doing is we're challenging what we believe. We're challenging our beliefs. Like, most of our beliefs they're about who we think we are, and there are beliefs about ourselves and our beliefs about the world. So when we start to challenge our beliefs, and we kind of build a character around our beliefs a little bit. So we build this kind of work character with the job thing. So we become this person who delivers in the requirements of the career. We attach our identity to our beliefs. I'm this type of person. I'm just not one of these people. I'm not someone who. And we kind of create this framework of beliefs which we think is us. And that's the reason it feels scary, because it feels like if we have to go looking at this and challenging this, it's like, well, hang on, this is what I know. This is who I am. So I just want to speak to why it feels like a scary prospect, because it feels like we're kind of challenging our actual sense of self. But the good news is it's just a set of beliefs, and all beliefs are just ideas. Every single belief we hold including the ones about ourselves, they're just ideas that we've stopped questioning. We've just internalized them and we just hold them as beliefs. So it's terrifying, but then it's liberating. It's pure liberation, because suddenly we're not obliged to hold on to this construct of beliefs that we've built up that might not actually be true and might not actually be serving us.
So it's a taking off the mask almost that we've this sort of creation that we've done. When you obviously deal with men and women, right? But in your opinion, do you think men are harder to get to this position? And if so, what can you suggest to them to help get sort of into this frame of mind?
I don't know if men I don't know if men are harder than women. I think it comes down to the individual. I think it has to come from the individual. I don't think anyone can be kind of. I think it has to come from within. It has to come from a place where kind of I'm not afraid of what I'm going to find, because if we've got to a position where, like you say, we're wearing a mask and we all have to do it. Well, we all think we have to do it. We all think we have to be a certain character. Here's my professional self, and here's my personal self, and this whole work-life thing. If that gets to the stage where that becomes too exhausting, because it's just simply too misaligned with who you really are, then that's the point when change can happen, because it's almost like, well, what else are you going to do? You know where this road leads. It's almost like you might as well try something. You might as well try something else. I think it has to come from within. I would say desperation can be a gift if it inspires action. It can be the greatest thing that ever happens if it inspires. Okay, I'm open to trying something different. I'm open to looking at things a little differently.
Okay, so it's hard for people that may find themselves, I don't know, let's say sort of spiraling down. So like you're almost shoehorned into a career, and that's now your life, and 20 years have passed and you're still doing the same job, you're still with the same girl who's now your wife, you've got a few kids. That almost becomes your safety net, right? And that's where the terrifying part comes from. But there has to be like a way that you can start to think like that, if you get what I mean, rather than being within. How do you start to have that conversation with yourself? Like, I'm coming to you and I'm saying, this is my problem right now. That's it.
Yeah, sure. No, well, you describe it perfectly. Normally it's I feel stuck. Normally it's I don't know where to start, right? I don't know where to begin. I just feel like I feel like I'm out of control. I feel exhausted, overwhelmed, stuck. It's all together. It's all this big thing that I just don't know where to start with it. So the first thing is to acknowledge that we always have a choice.
Nice.
And even if nothing changes right now, right this moment, everything is as it is. That part just is. Then if we bring it back to how we reflect on that part, how we relate to, respond to, react to what is, that part is in our control. So even just simplifying, focusing on the parts that are in our control and out of our control. And when we start to really zone in on what is truly in our control, it's a very short list. Life's always gonna keep happening. We can keep reacting to it, or we can learn to focus our awareness and our energy to the parts which are in our control. And there's not a lot. How I think, okay, that's in my control. It might not feel like it right now, but I can learn to start paying attention to my thought patterns. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of thought. even at just one subtle shift. Okay, how are my thought patterns? How is this helpful? I'm having this same thought loop every single day, over and over. Most of our thoughts are just repetitive. How is this helpful? So I've got some level of control over how I think, some level of control. I've got some level of control over how I feel. And I've got control over how I act, how I behave. And let's just start there. If everything else is what it is anyway for now, let's just focus on what's in my control and let's start here.
One thing that I think is really important, and one thing that I really want to get across is even if you are the most mindful person, the most relaxed, chilled, self-aware person, you are still going to be hit with the ebbs and flow of life. And like, I get it a lot. People are like, "Oh, you must be so happy all the time." No, you must be like excelling in everything. No, like life still happens. It's about sort of dealing with it. So those three things are core part of it, right? But I think for me, and the thing that I always try to get through to people is life happens, shit happens, essentially. So yeah, I think that's a nicer, yeah.
Life happens, yeah, and it's happening with or without your interpretation. It's happening right now, and it's going to continue happening.
Yeah. So the three things: you can control your thoughts, you can control your mood, and you can control your actions. Which is first? Thoughts?
Always.
Always thoughts. Okay.
Always.
And
Everything begins with a thought. Everything. Everything that was ever created in human history began as a thought in someone's mind. Always the thoughts.
okay.
And then the thoughts trigger the emotions. And this is where the pattern comes in. Because what we do is we assign an energy to the emotion. Oh, I recognize that. Yeah, I recognize that one. That's worry. That's fear. That's anxiety.
So here's a question. When we're talking about action, so there's a lot of stuff in social media or in books and stuff like that that are about like creating routine or this millionaire does X, Y, and Z. This is the successful routine. What's your thoughts on actions without thoughts?
Actions without thoughts, as in habitual routine.
As in just we're following someone else's thought process, essentially.
I see. Actions without thoughts. That's interesting. Well, it has to work for you. So this is the thing. I mean, this is a perfect example. These millionaire routines, as you call them, they work for the person who's created them. This work comes back to getting to know ourselves and sitting with ourselves and understanding what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to become this person, or am I trying to build something sustainable for myself? So habits are mega powerful. 5 minutes a day, even just one habit, if you commit to it for 5 minutes a day, a habit that works for you, you're entering into a contract with your future self, and you honor it every day, and you're not doing it for anyone else. You're building a relationship with yourself. So habits are mega powerful, but you have to. Intention is everything, right? We have to understand why we're doing it. Who am I becoming? What am I trying to do here? Who do I want to be in a year's time? Do I want to be the guy that gets up at 5 every day and jumps in an ice bath? Like, why am I doing that?
Yeah. Why is the most powerful question? It's like I was actually thinking about this the other day. You get annoyed when toddlers always ask why, but for me, it's a bit like, well, it's probably because you've stopped asking why, and you've sort of lost that enjoyment of it. It's not my favorite word again. I'm now a 32-year-old toddler. Yeah.
You're right. We stop asking. We think we know, and when we think we know, we assume completeness and we close our mind to it. And that's the thing with the beliefs thing. That's why when ideas become beliefs, we lock them in, we close our minds. They're still just ideas.
Yeah. So I was having this conversation the other day with someone on the podcast about sort of midlife crises and the sort of switch. So obviously I'm speaking to a lot of people like yourself that have gone down the mindfulness route and now are a coach and those sort of things. But there are a lot of people that at this sort of career junction go down a different route. And it would be interesting to get your thoughts on why you thought to go down, why your brain went that way rather than the other way.
For me, it came down to a choice. So for me, it was about fear. It was two fears. And I talked about looking ahead to this regret thing. Like, am I going to regret my life? Yeah. Am I going to go, what was I really capable of? So the fear of the unknown eventually became less than the fear of never finding out. So for me, it was a simple equation. It was the lesser of two fears. But I had to be very honest with myself that I was living my life out of fear in a lot of ways. I was making decisions or not making decisions out of fear. And that's a painful thing to acknowledge. That's a real challenge to the ego and the character and everything. But when I realized that, what is this fear? What am I actually afraid of here?
It's like sales jargon, fear of loss, desire for gain. Those are the only two things that are going to drive someone forward. And it feels like that shift of we went to the gain, right? Rather than I need to keep hold of what I've got right now. What does fulfillment look like for Tom now? It's only tough questions here, Tom.
Those are great questions. Fulfillment for me is to know that I'm making an impact, that I'm helping others, that I'm serving others. Where I've got to with this so far is I believe we each have a unique set of gifts or talents. We're all individual in our own unique way, and I believe that part of the growth process is understanding ourselves so that we can understand others. Because I think ultimately when we strip back all the layers, we are all the same. We are all pure awareness. We are all source, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's about understanding others so we can understand how we can serve. How can I make a positive impact? And I think we can all do that.
Do you think your definition of fulfillment will change, or do you think that's pretty set now?
Man, these are such good questions. I think it's set, but I don't want to. It feels like it's working right now. It feels like I haven't closed my mind to the possibility that it's evolving, but it feels like that's where I'm up to with it for now. Is how can I serve?
Yeah,
What's my purpose?
Yeah, I'm not trying to trip you up. What I'm sort of getting at is the next sort of level to that is that's obviously so big and so vast and so overwhelming for a lot of people to say my fulfillment to me is to serve people and get the best out of people and to deliver that. I guess my next question on that is like, how do you break that down, as you say, from a habit forming point of view, your day to day? What does that look like?
So it does feel big, but the alternative is we've all got a choice. We're either bringing someone else's vision of the future into reality, or we're bringing our own into reality. We're all doing something every day. We are all conscious creators. The future it's based on our actions today. So we are all doing that anyway. So what if we could choose to some degree the future that we're creating? because this comes back to feeling like I can't affect change, feeling powerless, feeling stuck, believing that the world's a big place and I'm a tiny, insignificant one person. Well, yeah, that is true, but also everything is created from, everything began with a thought, everything. And we all have access to infinite creative potential through our mind. It couldn't come from anywhere else.
And what does your future look like, essentially? Like we're talking about big pictures, and I really want to hone you into
Thanks. And I appreciate you bringing me back in, because I've got a tendency to go big picture. Right. Okay. Fantastic. So right now, so I've created Shift, which is the mindset journey to self-mastery. This is about self-awareness. It's a one-to-one coaching journey. And I've written a book, Shift, this year, 10 mindset shifts for the Great Awakening. So my immediate future is to bring Shift to as many people as possible. Anyone that is seeking self-improvement through self-awareness to benefit themselves and those around them, I want to bring Shift to as many people as possible.
Okay. Do you think self-development is doable without self-awareness?
Or self-compassion?
A lot of self. I asked this question the other day on a different podcast, but I'm going to ask it again. Do you think people need to be more selfish?
Yes, I do. 100% I do. And when you said a lot of self, the reason I believe it has to come first, because until we know ourselves, until we reconcile ourselves, until we can sit with ourselves, the world that we're going to find is going to be a reflection of our own inner misalignment. So I believe it has to come all awareness begins with self-awareness. And to speak to your point about selfishness is misunderstood. It's kind of, self-care is not selfish. We can't be a good father, good husband, good businessman, good anything until we look after ourselves to a level.
Do you think that men tend to be more selfless because of all those things you've just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I want to remind anyone watching that self-care is not selfish. Self-care is essential.
And you're obviously a father, and you're going through that sort of things. How have you had those conversations where you said, look, this is what I want to do, this is what I need to focus on, I'm going to need X amount of time per day to achieve this?
I don't think I've had those specific conversations, but I think my wife and I have got a good understanding of each other's priorities and roles in the family. I think I'm lucky that I've got a clear boundary time of school every day. That is work time, and outside of that, as much as I possibly can, I'm present with my sons.
Do you, this is going to be a tough question, do you think you should have those conversations?
About specific timings we're talking about, is it?
I think I just lost you there, Tom.
Yeah, can you, what's the question? Conversations around
essentially that framework of, like, I'm self-care, which can be seen as, I guess it can be seen as selfish when you have these dynamics, right? You have children to bring up, you have a relationship to hold on to and nurture and grow. But there is obviously a benefit to doing it. So that's a tough, for a lot of people, that's a tough conversation. It sounds like you're in a really great position where it's understood. But what I'm asking is do you think you might even benefit from having those conversations and going more deep into those conversations around doing it to yourself for yourself.
For sure, yeah. More communication is always going to be beneficial. So yeah, without a doubt. And you've got me reflecting on the level of depth around those conversations. I think it's important to in any partnership, and a marriage is a partnership, to understand compromise.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, and I think because what I'm really cautious of is creating men that are able to express themselves like you and I are in this really privileged position that we're in right now. But I also don't want them to affect essentially what they've built already, like which might be a family and those sort of things. And it's that for me is a really important point to get across, is that we can do all this without just tearing down what we've done and starting again.
I'm with you, man. Yeah, without burning it all down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah. Yes, you're right. Do you know what I would say though? I think there needs to be a recognition that you need to be prepared. But again, it comes back to knowing the lines, and to knowing what you're prepared, what lengths you're prepared to go to. Like how much are you prepared to change? How much do you really want to change? And it comes down to communication with your partner.
Yeah, and I think where you were going with that is maybe you were trying to bite your tongue because you didn't want to say it. Is that in some scenarios you do have to burn everything and start again.
If that's what it takes, you're right. I felt like I was going there. If that's what it takes, then that might be what it takes. I'm not trying to. I'm not suggesting anyone should take any action off the back of this, but if through the process of reflection and understanding and getting clear on your vision and understanding what it is you're doing and why you feel so stuck and what needs changing, that process, you might have to have you're going to find out some uncomfortable things, and that's why you feel stuck, because you're avoiding uncomfortable things. That doesn't mean you have to burn everything down, but perhaps in some cases there might be. I'm biting my tongue on this one, but I also think it's that is kind of part of the, when we get stuck, that whole thing about I feel stuck, it's because we aren't addressing the discomfort. We're ignoring the misalignment. And when we're out of alignment, there's a reason. And it doesn't mean we have to burn it down, but we're going to have to address things. We're going to have to face things that we have perhaps been afraid to face.
Yeah, but I guess to go full circle with what you say, thought is first, right? So don't go with action straight away. Don't listen to this and go, right, see you, I'm off. Like, you have to have the thought part first. That's the important bit.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've been biting your tongue with that one, but it's that's sort of what I wanted to get across, is that I think for people listening, that, like, again, I'm going to reiterate this, you and I are in a really privileged position to be able to have these conversations, one, and two, to really go immersively in it. And I think a lot of people, the majority of people in the world, aren't in such privileged positions to do it. And I think that thought and then slowly moving into action is really important, rather than just, I've listened to this podcast, now I've got to do crazy stuff to get to where I want to go to. So, Tom, you mentioned about the book and the program and those sort of things. Is there anything that you would say you found whilst writing that book that you didn't know before?
Yes. The final chapter of the book is called From Knowing to Unknowing. And really my conclusion is that I know nothing. And saying I know nothing is liberating, Because this whole thing, we think we know something, we stop trying to understand it, and then we think we know something else, and then we build up this kind of, we collect knowledge, when actually I don't know. I know nothing is liberation.
Yeah. Well, you know something. Don't sell yourself short.
Well, what do you know? Because this is what we get to in the coaching space when we start to break it down. It's like, well, okay, I feel anxiety, right? I feel anxiety, my anxiety. Well, how do you know it's anxiety? And then we'll start to reflect on it. Well, yeah, because it makes me think a certain way and it makes me do certain things. And here's what's brought me to this point. But how do you know it's anxiety? What does it feel like? And then when we start to actually pay attention to the feeling, okay, yeah, it's a feeling in my solar plexus. It's really familiar. It feels heavy. It feels tight. Okay, let's just pay attention to it. Let's just feel into it, observe it, acknowledge it, but don't feel the need to do anything with it. Okay, yeah, something's happened. Something's changed there. Suddenly it feels a little different. So I'm just challenging this notion, because when we know something, we lock it down. We lock it into a belief. We tighten up around it. We contract around it.
I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And it's in regards to the current landscape of using words like anxiety, mental health, and those sort of things. Essentially, in some scenarios, maybe been sort of weaponized to an extent, like I'm depressed or I'm anxious. And like, what's your thoughts on that?
Weaponized is the word. Labels. So for me, and I've made quite a few LinkedIn posts about this, labels are really not helpful, because the moment we have a label, we think we know it. When we label something, we stop trying to understand it. And when we identify a piece of our self-image, our self-identity, our feeling with a label, that's my anxiety. That's my anxiety. Oh yeah. That's what that is. And I'm not saying, I'm not for a second saying that we don't feel anxious. It's a part of the human experience to feel inner discomfort in the solar plexus. What I think is very dangerous is when we attach a label to the human experience, and then with that label comes a set of a stigma. It might, medication, whatever else comes with it. I'm not undermining the idea of anxiety.
Yeah.
But what we are ultimately trying to do is we're trying to pin something on a feeling.
I think there's a definite difference, and there's a different space between being mentally ill and the actual extreme side of that, and the true side of that, and having a bad day, but using words that are readily available. So I think that's nice. Don't give a name to the feeling is quite a nice way of looking at that from that side of the spectrum. Obviously, there are severe mental health issues that require medical intervention and those sort of things. But maybe if you're just having a bit of a bad day or you're not feeling 100%, listen to Tom.
You're absolutely right. And I worked in specialist mental health services for years. Mental illness, clearly, mental illness is a thing, as physical illness is a thing. We have a choice. We have a choice. If we learn to observe our feelings, and coming back to what I said before, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. Even that one idea, you're not obliged to identify with the narrative of your mind. it isn't you. It's just mind chatter. Everyone gets mind chatter.
Yeah.
You're not obliged to feel something in your solar plexus and then try and pin something on it. You can just feel into it. You can feel it. And this is it. It's the fear of what that feeling, it's the fear of sitting with the feeling. And actually, if you find the courage to sit with the feeling, it's just energy. It's when we try and pin a label onto the energy that then we think we know what we've got. We think we know what we're dealing with.
Nice way to sum it up, I think. Let's look at the mindfulness space, the mental health space as a whole. What do you think is missing? What do you think there needs to be more of? Or what's something that's doing well right now?
I think people are becoming, I think it's becoming less fringe, which is fantastic for people to become self-aware and talk about mental and physical health. I think there's a real shift in the last year or two where health and well-being, individuals are recognizing that we are responsible for our own health and well-being to a certain extent. This whole victimhood narrative, which is at every level of society, we're conditioned to look out there for the source of our discomfort, which is it's disempowerment. It's saying you don't have a say in how your life goes. So I think it's very empowering to individuals and communities and society when we recognize that we have some level of control over our own physical and mental health.
Nice. So more control is needed, like more self-awareness of you have control is the lesson that's needed.
Awareness of what's in your control and learning to let go of what is not in your control, because most of the things we give our attention, our energy to, we're reacting to something that's already happened. It's effectively in the past, and we're investing energy to react to something we have zero control over. So even bringing awareness to that is immense.
It's a lovely way of summing it up, Tom. Most definitely. If people have loved what they've heard and they like what you're saying, where's the best place to find you? Where's the best place to engage with yourself?
LinkedIn, Lewis. I'm Tom Godfrey, mindset coach on LinkedIn, and you can find the links to all my content there. I'm redoing my website, but it's not going to be ready yet, so I'll put it in for the recording. Actually, it's tg-coaching.co.uk. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Thanks.
Amazing. Well, Tom, thank you so much for your time today. It's genuinely appreciated. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Very big thinking. My brain is a little bit whirling, but thank you so much for your time.
We went out there. Thanks a lot, Lewis. I really appreciate you inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.